Hi everyone and welcome. My name is Pascal Vigné, and in this video I'd like to talk to you about legato playing. I made a video a few months ago in French and people asked me to do an English version, so here it is. Here are my 10 tips for you to improve your legato technique. So for those of you who are not familiar with legato technique, you can think of it as a combination between hammer-ons, pull-offs and slides. When you ascend a scale, it goes like this. And when you descend a scale, it goes like this. So using pull-offs exclusively. So if I do a combination of these, it goes like this. And if you want to combine hammer-ons, pull-offs and slides, it goes like this. So I've come up with a few tips that have been helpful to a lot of my students. I hope they will be helpful to you. This involves micro movements, so it's very subtle, but it makes a big difference when it comes to tone and mastering the technique. So the first tip I'd like to give you concerns the position of the left hand. Some guitarists try to play legato using a blues position. So, you know, blues, you have fingers like this, and basically it's really great when you have to bend strings. And when you play pentatonics, but when you have to play legato, it's not so good, because you don't have a really good range of motion and you can't really play with the tip of your fingers. So my first advice to you would be to use the classical position, which means having the fingers like this and not like this. So basically you have to move your thumb behind the neck. You don't have to grab the neck anymore, and your fingers are going to be parallel to the frets, and therefore you will have much more freedom, you know, to play legato. So now that you've come up with a good classical position, like this, what you have to be aware of is the tip of your fingers. You really have to play with the tip of your fingers and not play with this part, you know. Otherwise, you're going to end up playing 2 strings at a time and you're going to end up having lots of parasite noises. So you want to avoid that. And the thing is really to play with the tip of your fingers, which is really more efficient in terms of control and sound. So now that you have a good position and you're ready to play with the tip of your fingers, what you have to be careful is to play close to the frets. So which means if you're playing here, for example, what I do is I play close to the frets, not here, because if you play here in the middle, you're going to spend much more energy and you're going to feel tired and you're going to feel pain after a while. So, you know, you have to maximize the movement and don't waste too much energy. So being close to the frets really help, playing with the tip of your fingers as well and using the classical position. So another important thing is what goes on behind the neck, which involves the thumb. So when you go up and down the neck like this, so what's really important here is that the thumb follows the hand position all the time. I've seen some students play legato technique keeping the thumb here, so on the upper part of the neck, even when they play here. So it's a really bad idea. The thing is that the thumb has to follow the hand position all the time. So you do that gradually and the movement has to be really smooth. You don't have to put too much pressure on the thumb on your hand as well. Otherwise, you know, the sound is not going to be flowing that much. So it's really important to, you know, follow where you play. And you have to think about this in the vertical sense when you play in boxes like this, But you know, when you move all the way up to the neck, it's exactly the same thing. You don't have to put too much pressure on the thumb, otherwise your hand is not going to move, you know, smoothly. So let's move to tip number 5, and it's a really important one, especially for beginners. When you start playing guitar, usually you don't have a good finger independence, and what happens is that you play a fragment, a scale fragment. Let's take this for example. All right, and what you basically do is each finger replaces the previous one, so it goes like this. So after playing a note, you remove the finger and you put the other finger, the next finger, and so on and so on. And it's really a bad idea because you don't have a good balance in your left hand and you won't be able to play fast at all. And so this tip is not only for legato playing, but also for alternate picking, sweep picking, whatever the technique. Most of the time you have to, you know, pile up your fingers. So you have some very basic exercises that you can do, very simple things, but really helpful one too. What you can do is play chromatics like this. And when you play guitar, what you have to keep in mind is that the index, the first finger here, you have to use it as a pivot, and you really don't have to take it off unless you change strings. And when you change strings, actually, you don't have to take it off too far away from the fretboard, you know, but just release the pressure. You know, just keep in contact with the strings, release the pressure, and then move on to the next string. So that's really important if you want to master the instrument, have a good command of all the techniques. That's really something that you have to keep in mind, whatever the technique is. So speaking about the index on the first finger, what you have to do is use it to mute strings as well. So it's really something that's not obvious at first. It's a really slight movement, so it's not obvious for us to see. But for example, if I have to play a few notes, let's say on the E and A strings like this, what I do when I start playing here, so the F sharp, my finger presses the second fret on the E string, but at the same time it keeps quiet the other strings. So I can play this, but if I play the other strings, you see, there's no noise, no parasite noise. If I don't do that, I will have here, you see, the open strings that are going to resonate, and you really don't want that. If you play a clean tone or at a really low volume, it's not that big a deal, but you know, if you play loud on stage, for example, if you don't keep the strings quiet, you know, the guitar is going to scream. So you really have to keep that in mind. And it's not really like a, you know, a bar chord where you press all the strings. If I do that, I'm going to have all the other strings that are going to resonate as well. So it's really just subtle movement. Just press the fret you need to play and just touch the other strings around just to keep them quiet. And you know, keeping things quiet when you play guitar with the distortion is really, really important. You can have a really good technique, but if you don't keep it quiet, it's just going to sound awful. So keep that in mind. Now let's move to tip number 8, and it concerns the right hand, which is really important too. Even though legato playing involves left hand to play, to keep things quiet, you also have to use the right hand, but it's not only true for legato playing, but it's true for all techniques. So basically the thing is, use this part of your hand. It's not really the palm of your hand, it's just the side, really, the external side of your hand. And just mute all the strings. So you can do that by putting the side of your hand close to the bridge, and make sure you just, you know, keep all things quiet. like this. So once you've done that, you can take off your right hand just a little if you play the low strings. You know, and while doing that, my pinky here, just keep the E string quiet as well. So just take off your right hand a little bit just to let the strings resonate. And you can also use the fingers of your right hand to mute the high strings, the higher strings like the E, the B, and the G strings. So if you start from here, for example, once you've done playing the E string, you can put the third finger on it to keep it quiet. Once you've done playing the B string, you can put another finger on it. You know, and this way, when you play, for example, the G and the D string, the palm of your hand mutes the first two strings, and with those two fingers, you can mute the B and the E string. You won't get any noisy, crappy sounds this way. The thing is that you have to really make the difference between hammer-ons and pull-offs, separate those two, and focus on the one approach that is more difficult to you. Most of the time, people have more difficulties with pull-offs because you have to struggle against gravity, and so if that's the case with you, focus on that. Take a fragment on one string, so do that 1,000 times and really pay attention to all the details we mentioned. The position of the left hand. Am I using the tip of my fingers? What is the range of motion that I'm using? Am I playing close to the frets? Am I muting the strings with my index here? Am I muting the strings with my right hand, with the palm of my right hand and with the fingers of my right hand? All these little things that really make a difference between a good technique and a brilliant, excellent technique. And so really pay attention to details. If you have trouble playing pull-offs, so play this 1,000 times. Once you're comfortable with this, just play this on two strings. If it's the other way around for you, if that's the hammer-ons that are more difficult, you can do the other way around. So you can do this, maybe using one string first. And try to have a constant subdivision as well. Don't do this. Some players try to play guitar, you know, and have a really full range of motion, like, you know, they're going really far from the neck, and they play like this. Like this, you know, they go really far, whatever the technique. And if you play slow, really slow, actually that might help the articulation. But, you know, you can really have a great articulation by using a really small range of motion, and it's going to help you to maximize the movement efficiency, so you'll have much more power in a smaller range, and this way you can play much faster. So what I advise you to do is, you know, try to think about it, whatever the technique. I mean, if you pick, it goes exactly the same. It's the same technique, basically. You know, I don't go further from the fretboard, you know, and if I play legato, it goes like this. So I really try to stay close to the neck, to the fretboard. I don't go too far away, otherwise you won't be able to play fast, and you know, you're gonna waste energy, like we mentioned before. So I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope it's going to be helpful to you. Please feel free to subscribe to my YouTube channel. I also have some music if you want to take a look at my Bandcamp page. All the links are below. If you want to leave a thumbs up, that's cool too. And I'll see you in a bit. Bye.